I'm 19. When I was 18, I tried to vape. I have never in my life smoked anything with nicotine. I started to smoke one Elf Bar or Lost Mary a day. I thought that the percentage of 2% written on the cigarette stands for 2% nicotine. But it stands for 2% mg of nicotine, which would be 20%. So 3 packs of normal cigarettes or more. I smoked vapes 5 days, then I hadn't jerked off for 7 days. But that day I decided to do it because I had to have an evening with a slut who only came to fuck. Everything went fine when I jerked off. But when she arrived 3 hours later, he didn't get up at all. I touched her everywhere, but nothing. We got into bed and still nothing. I told her I have to go to the bathroom for a moment. I tried in every way to do something, but it ended up being there until she's gone. After that, I decided to don't smoke vapes and everything. It's normal now.
My first boyfriend called me a freak because I have a stammer and enjoy anal sex. I know those two things don't seem to correlate, but hear me out. Yes, I stammer, which is explained by a lot of anxiety and insecurities I suffered during my teenage years. At the same time, I was horny AF back then, and sexual exploration was a way to find respite from that anxiety. Eventually, I got a boyfriend in high school and began having sex. I was very curious about anal, so one day I asked him to do it. He said no. I said okay, and we had normal sex. Just before going to bed, I got a long message saying that he couldn't stay with a freak like me, and that my liking of anal sex and my stammer were a clear sign that I was hooked inside. I never saw him again after that. This doesn't affect me anymore, and today I do enjoy anal very much. I just wanted to write this to say to whoever is out there doubting themselves, just do whatever floats your boat.
Okay, so I 14 yo F and my stepbrother 17 yo, who I'll call M. So we have known each other for 2 years now. So M lives with my dad and his mom and sister. I live with my mom, but I'm back and forth with my dad. So at school earlier today, M asked me and my cousin, who I'll call S, to hang out, and S instantly said yes, and I agreed, and we decided to hang out at the park after school. So me and S went together. Then M showed up. We were just sitting there bored. Then M hands me his phone, and it said, "Do you want to have sex with me?" I was shocked and confused and didn't know what to say, so I said, "I don't know." And then I handed him back the phone. But M kept persisting. "We should." Then I tried telling S that I felt uncomfortable and wanted to leave, but she didn't understand why, so then M started messing with S, then S got mad and left. So now me and M are alone. Then he walked up to me really close and said, "Come on, I already have a condom on, so don't be lame." But I kept saying IDK because I was scared to say no. Then out of nowhere S came back, then he just said fine in a mad way and went home. So I'm scared to go to school tomorrow to see him. What do I do? Little update. M has added me on Snapchat somehow. IDK how he got my user, but he was trying to get me to sneak out and have sex with him, but I told him no and blocked him. But now I'm more scared. Second update. M has texted me on Messenger this morning, saying he's very sorry for everything he did yesterday and that he's not going to school anymore. IDK if any of that is true though. It makes me feel like I should just let this go. But I went to go tell my mom what happened, but she was already gone, which was weird, but I had to get to school, so I haven't gotten the chance to talk to her yet. I'm gonna try after school to talk to her. Third update. Hello guys. So M went to school today, and it felt like I was seeing him all over school, but he was still trying to get me to have sex. He doesn't care. I'm only 14, and he doesn't take no for an answer. Anyways, I told my mom, IDK if she believes me or not. She was asking if I have proof, which I don't. Now I feel like I shouldn't have even told her, as now it looks like I'm making it up. But she took my phone away, told me to go to my room, and now I'm typing this on an iPad. IDK when I'll get my phone back. That's the only update I have. IDK, if you guys will even see this update, I just have to say this. So I know this looks fake, but it's real. I have no reason to lie. Not a guy. And for everyone asking for proof, what makes you think I have proof? When I couldn't even show my mom anything. That's why she doesn't believe me. Make it make sense. I would like to say for everyone who's saying I should go talk to my guidance counselor, she doesn't really do her job. She just sits around, waits to go home. I don't know what to do about that. That's like my whole school. My whole school doesn't do their job. Also, my dad and I do not have a good relationship at all. Since him and M's mom got together, so I don't really talk to them like that. I'm trying to talk to my mom again at dinner and hope it goes all right. Update. Well, I tried talking to my mom again. All she did was ignore me at dinner, so I'm not sure what I even should do at this point. I have to go to my dad's tomorrow to stay for the weekend. I'm scared, and I'm gonna try and tell my dad and M's mom about it. IDK if they'll believe me. So M just texted me, and I was able to get a screenshot of it. IDK if I'd consider it enough evidence for anyone to believe me. But I hope. Update. Hi guys. Well, I sent my mom and dad the screenshot right away. They believed me, and my mom started crying and said she was sorry that she didn't believe me. And so my dad called the police. They came to my mom's house first to talk to me about it. They asked all sorts of questions about M and stuff. Then one of the police officers went to my dad's house to talk to M, and they said he's denying it even when I had proof, which is crazy. They said my dad either has to divorce M's mom, so I can keep going over to see him, or they have to send M away somewhere else, not sure where or what will happen with that. And they said, since I'm almost 15, I can give consent or not. So, M hasn't gotten I trouble or anything, the police said. Since the screenshot I showed them, it doesn't say who it's from. All it says is user because he also blocked me on Messenger. So there really isn't any proof with his name of it. So IDK, what due to? I just hope my dad and my mom do something about it, and I'm pretty sure this is the last update, but who even knows?
In college, I met a girl at a house party. We drank and talked. Drank and talked. Drank and talked. Starting kissing, tongues and all. She asked me to the restroom with her. Of course, I said. She took me by the hand and led me away. I went in first, and she shut the door behind her and locked it. I was certain things were about to go to the next level. She said, hang on, and unzipped her pants. Sat down on the toilet. I thought she had to pee. Then she grunted. I heard a fart. Then a plop. I unlocked the door and ran. Never saw her again.
I grew up thinking I was a bad kid, deserved to be punished. My mom had Vegas rules. What happened in the house stayed in the house. We were not allowed to leave the house. We were not allowed to wear clothes. We had no electricity, no running water. Mom was never home, always out working. She would leave us with family friends for days, weeks at a time. Whatever the rules of the house were, we must obey them or else. If one child broke a rule, everyone would be beat. Didn't matter if one child had been asleep when the rule was broken. All must line up and take the whooping. No crying allowed. No laughing allowed. Now I had a bad habit of randomly laughing when we'd line up for spankings, so our spankings were often more than they should have been. Everything was increments of 3. We moved every 6 months. We were homeschooled. Mom had religious mania on top of it and was convinced we were warriors in a spiritual battle, and we were so important that the apocalypse would happen in our lifetime, and all we would have would be our wits and one another. We joined a cult and lived on a Native American reservation. They were Cherokee, but we are Caribbean natives, and they adopted us. I was sold at 13 to a man 45 years my senior. I was his pet for 4 years. Mom allowed me to attend a Christian university at 18. While attending class, she packed up my younger siblings and moved across country. She sent me a notarized letter stating she was abandoning me and I was on my own. A year later, my eldest brother tells me he thinks I'm depressed, and I go to therapy where I start telling stories to my therapist and realize I had been trafficked. I became suicidal and went to a psych ward and opened up more. When I left the hospital, my therapist accused me of exaggerating. It's been 7 years since I was abandoned. Everything I knew was a lie.
I had sex with my dad's ex-wife after my grandma's funeral. I decay if this is allowed, but I will try to make it short and give details. When I was 15, my dad's mom, my grandma, passed away in South Texas, and I went to her funeral. All of my family was there, including my stepsister and my dad's ex-wife. Well, funeral happened, and we all went to my grandma's and grandpa's house, and we all there. And then my stepsister, which is 24 at the time, and her mom, 45 plus, invited me to go stay with them for a few days after the funeral. At the time, I had a lot of substance issues at home, and I was still young, and I knew my sister drank alcohol, and I knew she would let me. So I really wanted to go for that reason. Now looking back, obviously it was wrong, but at the time I just wanted to do it. So I told my mom, and she knew better. She knew about how fucked up and how bad it is on my dad's side, specifically his ex-wife's side of the family. I made scene, and my mom let me go with them, and they said they would pay for food and take me back to my hometown. So we leave. And once we get over to my sister town, they'll just say it, Angelton TX. And how you spell it? Just as I thought everyone was drinking, everyone was smoking weed. Well, I was happy with that, because I smoked weed. So that night, we were drinking at her mom's house, and my sister wanted to drive back to her house. It was 25 to 30 minutes away. But I still wanted to get more fucked up, so I asked to stay. And so did her mom, saying that it would be okay that I could stay on the couch. So nothing happened that night. But the next night I stayed again, and we drank and smoked weed. And then so we were laying down on the couch at around 11, maybe 12 a.m. And then I don't remember how it got to that point, but she was laying on one couch and I was laying on the other. We're both barely awake, and the couch are close enough that we're holding hands. Then honestly, I remember saying, come here. Then she said, no, you come here. And I got up and went over and we started making out. Then we had sex. That's it. Nothing happened after that. We just both acted like it never happened. Years went by. I am 20 at this point. My life just got worse. I can't have sex. Just weird to me. But then one day I have a dream about my sister and I start thinking weird, nasty things about her. And I couldn't help it. I was going crazy. So I told her that I was having these thoughts and that I really wanted to do these things with her. And immediately she told me I'm sick and that these things are wrong and that I should get help. So I did. I talked to some people and I told them the story in detail. And what he had come to conclusion was that he said, when all the stuff happened with her mom, it made me believe that I was okay, but it wasn't. So now I'm going to tell her what happened. I'm 21 years old, and I don't want to be around her or her family. I forgot to mention some things, and that I don't see them a lot, because I live with my mom in Austin, Texas. Some things, and that I don't see them a lot, because I live with my mom in Austin, Texas, while they live somewhere in Houston. So I don't want to be forgiven or nothing. Okay, I was wrong too, but I just want her to know what really happened. And also, I live with my mom and my two sisters, and I never had any type of feeling like that towards them. I guess I just never consider them my family because of what happened or because I never really see them. So yeah, that's one of my story. I just want to know what people think of me and what happened.
Before I got into Reddit, I used to use an app called Whisper. It's an anonymous app, but if you have location turned on, it shows how close people are nearby you. One time I made a post and someone messaged me who was 0.2 miles away. She shared a lot of personal stuff about herself, which surprised me because you just don't do that in that app. Some of the things she shared were, she's in her late 40s. The street she lives in, which is right across my street, she is married but her husband is very abusive and she's trying to leave him. She has a lot of panic attacks and gets paranoid. She told me she's into young men. She sent me her face pics, which I recognized her when I walk my dog. She told me she's looking for a young guy. She said she uses Tinder too, and that she gives earth-shattering blowjobs. She shared a story about the time she bought a gun and learned how to use it because she gave a guy from Tinder her home address, but she later regrets and becomes paranoid that he's gonna come kidnap her. She also kept begging me to send her a pic of me and for us to meet up. She jokingly said she will knock on every door until she finds me. I'm a young guy with high sex drive, and she looks okay looking. So I could have easily gotten convinced to meet her for sex, but I'm glad I took the time to listen to her, which quickly made me change my mind. Last I heard of her was that she got pregnant and ran away from home. I sometimes wish I could have at least been there for her, or done something to help her, because her husband was very abusive, and she was really scared of him.
In high school, I was part of a dance group at school and was living with the dance instructor because of family problems I was having. the dance group had an overnight competition to go to, and one of the girls were having their birthday coincide. So we all came up with the idea of bringing wine coolers to celebrate. It all seemed to be going well until the birthday girl decided to have one the night before competition, instead of after, like we all agreed to. She stuffed the empty bottle in her bag because we had one of the chaperones come in to tell us it was bedtime. The next day, during the competition, the birthday girl forgot a piece of clothing to her outfit, and a chaperone went to the room and found it for her, but she also found the empty bottle. After competition, we were confronted about it, and I took all the blame. I said it was mine and that I had a problem drinking during stressful times like the competitions. They bought it, but decided instead of telling on me and getting me expelled, I had to go to therapy and rehab to get clean. After that was settled, we went back to the room and panicked about what to do with the other 23 bottles. One of the chaperones' moms came in later that night and told us she knew we had more and that we had to get rid of it. She helped us take them out to the hotel dumpster. This led to quite a shift in my life, and I ended up breaking up with my partner after time at a mental hospital. I then moved out of my teacher's house when I turned 18 and was dating someone I met at the mental hospital. When that relationship ended, I moved across the country to live with a friend, who is now my partner of 10 years. This event changed my life in such a drastic way. I often wonder what my life would have been like had my friend at the time just stuck to the plan and we didn't get caught.
I, Alex 29M, have been married to my wife, Olivia 29F, 5 years. We have been together for 7 years in total. We started together during my senior year of college and ran in the same friends group. Although I had known her for 2 years at that point, she was the sister of a girl who went to the college. I was supposed to be a rebound. She had been in a relationship for the previous 3 years, even lived with the guy who I was sort of friends with. They had issues before they moved in together. Needless to say, moving in together to fix issues wasn't a good idea. Things got worse, and he kicked her out of their apartment. 3 days later, she was riding me on my couch. Olivia had been single for around a combined month's worth of time since she was a freshman in high school. All of her previous boyfriends had issues around sex, and my reputation preceding itself, she figured I'd be a good candidate to have some fun with given her newfound freedom. She had never had a fling and just wanted to use me like a friends with benefits thing. I wasn't complaining. Sex was amazing. However, I had always kind of had a thing for her. I just never acted on it because she had a boyfriend. I was smitten from that first night on my couch. Fortunately, she was not very good at maintaining any form of her own boundaries. It took her a month to really kiss me, but other than that, any time I asked her on any type of date, she said yes. We were spending every available night together. After 6 weeks, she asked me to be exclusive with her. I agreed. After college, I got my ideal job as a social media manager. My now wife had been doing secretarial work since she was 19 and had just landed a spot at a high school. The first 2 years of dating and engagement were really fun, and we connected in every way. The whole thing was fast. We dated a year, engaged a year, and got married. Our first year of married life was pretty good. We did a small vacation, bought a house, and had discussions on children. We agreed to not start until we were closer to 30. When COVID hit, I went to working from home. While the buildings were closed and most staff at home, the secretaries were still working in building. It was during this time that we began to drift apart. I just found the whole situation to be pretty easy. I was still doing my job from the comfort of my basement office. I found keeping the house clean was a breeze, with it just being the two of us and her being gone most of the day. With some extra time on my hands, I got really into GTA Online. It was my new hobby. I was playing quite a bit during that period of time. When Olivia would get home, I was usually just getting into the ideal playtime. I tried including her in it, but she wasn't very interested in my new hobby. Since then, I have expanded my variety of games, so I am online a fair amount of time each day. It was also during this time that some glaring communication issues became more and more evident. This problem has only gotten worse in the last 4 years since I went to work for Boom. For example, for nearly 3 years she has been telling me that I don't communicate with her. Which is not true. I tell her everything that happens to me, which isn't very much. I work at home and my main hobby is here at home. There really isn't that much to tell, so I don't really understand why this is an issue. I think she has finally come to understand this, as it hasn't been brought up for months now. This is just one problem we've been battling the last few years. There are other things she is always going on about as well, like that I don't care about her or support her, which is ridiculous because I obviously do. I married her, wouldn't have done that if I didn't care. And even though I make way more than her now, I rarely splurge on myself. Instead, I encourage her to get the things she likes. She buys a ton of shit every month. We could literally survive off my salary now. She chooses to work. I have no idea what she wants. I work full-time and do almost all the housework. Those are the things she largely nags me about. Anytime we try to talk about any of our issues, though, just feels like I am supposed to sit there and take it. She never wants to talk about any of the issues I see. She just tells me I'm being defensive and hijacking the conversation, always telling me that I don't say anything until she brings something up, and then suddenly it's a floodgate of problems I have with her. It's not a floodgate, and it's nothing new. It's the same problems. She never just outright says what she wants or what she means. I have told her so many times I'm not going to pick up on stupid hints, and half the time I have no idea what she wants. She wants me to be vulnerable. What does that even mean? I'm not going to just randomly start crying. I think the biggest thing that shows me that she doesn't care about me or like me at all is complete lack of physical intimacy. Our sex life started to diminish right around the same time COVID hit. Frequency just kept dropping and has continued to over the last 4 years. I was the only one ever initiating. The rejections built up more and more. Eventually I just stopped trying. Most of the time I don't even come to bed anymore. Instead, I just sleep on the couch down here in my office. Our problems aside, we've had some changes over the last few years. 3 years ago I switched jobs. I'm still a social media manager. I just jumped from the small company I was working at to a much larger corporation. I had lots of reasons. I liked the people I worked with before, but this was more money, better benefits, and 100% work from home. My old company was planning a hybrid situation once COVID restrictions began relaxing. Olivia also switched jobs 2 years ago and became a secretary at another large company. About 6 months, the new entry-level guy, Asher 23M, began working at Olivia's company. At this same time, she got a new iPhone. Like usual, I set her phone up for her. However, I had been suspecting that she was talking badly about me to her mother and sister. Just seemed like their overall mood towards me had soured. So, I am not proud of this, but while I was setting up her phone, I also put some different types of spying apps on it and synced everything into the cloud, which I then synced to my tablet. I did see her complain to her sister about our marriage. Her sister never really bashed me, just gave her advice. A month ago, though, is when I started to see her message with Asher. It started off as just friendly office talk. Quickly that turned into innocent personal talk. They would discuss books they liked, TV shows, hobbies, and so on. They would do this for hours at a time. It definitely had me thinking something was going on, but at the same time, if she just had a friend, I figured it would be good for her and keep her off my ass at least some. The last 2 weeks I have noticed she was in a better mood overall. That is also when their conversations took a steep turn into the inappropriate. It was quick too. They went from just discussing a love of Hunger Games to talking about what they wanted to do to each other in a single night. It only kept escalating from there. And this past Wednesday, they met outside of work for the first time. She gave me the dumbest excuse too, telling me she had to work late. She typically works 8:30 to 5 p.m., and she wasn't sure how long she would have to work past 5 p.m. Even if I didn't know what she was up to, this would still be a red flag. She works under a very high up in the company, and he is literally the sweetest old man. I have met him twice, and she has never said one bad word about this guy. So for him to suddenly require her to work for an undetermined amount of time past her normal hours, after 2 years in which she was never asked to do extra or stay late, was a red flag in itself. She told me that on Monday, and I decided I was just going to play it cool. See what happened. I didn't want to burst her bubble and have her backtrack with all that "it was never physical" crap. Wednesday came, she didn't get home until around 8:15 p.m. and immediately hit the shower. Normally she likes to snack first, work out, or sit down and scroll on her phone for a half hour. She tried to come down to my office and talk to me, but I just ignored her. I knew what she did, and I wasn't interested in easing her conscience. I actually think I inadvertently did though, as she seemed to relax more just before she left. I guess the thing that is throwing me off is I don't really feel any which way about her cheating. Feel like I should be pissed or hurt, but I'm just meh. I can't really explain it. Later that night, they exchanged a few messages, but she was very short in response and was giving off the vibe that she didn't want to talk with him. That changed the next day, and they talked a lot more, including discussing how amazing the night before had been. Olivia told him that she was going to tell me that late Wednesdays was going to be a regular thing going forward. She did just that yesterday. I am genuinely happy about this. Wasn't a one-off situation. She is having a full-blown affair, and I can prove it. She had no power over me now. I don't care what she is doing, so if she is trying to hurt me, she has failed. Now I can get out of this marriage and not be the bad guy. I've always assumed she would paint me negatively if we ever divorced. Now she can try, but at the end of the day, she cheated. I know I have let myself go a little bit physically, and of course there are things I could improve on. But everyone does. That doesn't mean it's okay to go out and cheat. If you're that unhappy, go out and get a divorce first. I was planning on spending this day researching divorce attorneys. Olivia came into my office about 20 minutes ago and asked me to take her on a hike and picnic. I don't know what she is getting at. I could see the shock on her face when I agreed to go. I'm debating on whether or not to drop the bomb on her while we're out there or wait until we get back. I half expect she will ask for a divorce. I, Alex 29M, didn't end up saying anything during the hike. Neither did my wife, Olivia 29F. It was actually a really nice day. We hiked, we joked, we talked. It was like being on a first date. She had packed a picnic filled with my favorite snacking foods. I just kept expecting her to ask for a divorce or come clean about the affair and beg for forgiveness. It didn't happen. When we were done, we drove home. When we got home, I went down to my office and started up a game. She went and showered. I was sitting there playing when she walked in and said, "I'm ordering takeout from the Japanese place. Then I'm going to watch Abigail. I would like it if you watched it with me, but you don't have to if you're busy. What do you want to eat?" I told her. She left the room and I went back to my game. I was planning on just gaming through the night. I had already missed a lot of time going out with her during the day. Then I started feeling guilty about not watching the movie with her. I ended up leaving my game when she came back with the food. We ate and watched Abigail together. When we were done eating, she moved over closer and we cuddled on the couch together. I couldn't even remember the last time we had a day or night like that one. The next day on Sunday, I was gaming, and I just kind of started to feel bored with it. I went into our home gym, you want to call it that. It's a treadmill and set of dumbbells going up from 5 pounds to 50 pounds. I worked out for the first time in probably 3 years. I went back to gaming afterwards, but it did feel good. On Monday, when she got home, I came back upstairs and asked her how her day was. We ended up talking for 2 hours about random stuff like work and what's going on with her friends. She made us both dinner and picked out a new show for us to binge. We didn't make it, but halfway through episode 2, and we were getting it on right there on the living room couch. We hadn't had sex in at least 5 months at this point. Well, I guess that's only true for me. Tuesday was much of the same. I had no idea what was going on, but she was putting real effort into our relationship, and in return, I began to do the same. When Wednesday rolled around, I wondered if she would work late or not. I monitored her messages during the day, and while they are few and far between when they are at work, the ones that were there did indicate she intended to go to his place that night. Which is exactly what she did. For the 2 hours or so she was there, I sat and wondered. I wondered why it didn't bother me. It made no sense. I should be very angry that she is banging some other guy literally right at that moment. It didn't though. I don't want to give the wrong idea. I also got no pleasure or excitement from the knowledge either. I felt nothing. My feelings were literally no different than if she were out getting her nails done, or at Starbucks having a coffee with a friend. When she got back home after that second time, I was going to confront her. I had no doubt about what transpired. His graphic text to her on her way home really didn't leave much to the imagination. Like the previous week, she went straight to the shower upon arrival. I waited in the bedroom for her to come out. Livia walked out into the room wrapped in her towel. I had a somber look on my face. I kept thinking about how great the previous few days had been, but I still needed to confront her. When I saw her, though, she looked literally amazing and actually happy. I was so used to her sulking. I had noticed this change slowly after her affair started. She was much more like the Olivia I had fallen in love with 7 years ago. When she looked at me, her face turned to concern, actual affectionate concern for me. She approached quickly, put her hand on my back, and asked me what was wrong in a sweet voice. I looked at her. I actually felt a well of tears begin to form, but I pushed that down. I decided not to say anything. I told her I had a rough day with work and just needed some reassurance. She loved on me with some shoulder rubs and we talked about it. I got up and went to get her some food I had prepped earlier. As I was leaving, she said, "You know all those times I told you I wanted you to open up to me or be vulnerable? This is what I meant. You don't have to face everything alone. I want to be part of your life." I nodded and left. After that night, I started to really think about our relationship and just about myself as a whole. Ever since COVID hit, I really haven't done anything. I barely talked to my parents. I had lost connection with all of my friends. I was horribly out of shape, especially for a guy who had always been the fit guy. I decided if she was going to put effort into our relationship, then I should as well. I began to look into some relationship books. I also designed myself a workout plan. All of that was almost 6 months ago now, and I can report, I don't think I have been happier than I am now. I really enjoy the routine of our lives. Sunday and Friday are do your own thing nights. On Mondays and Tuesdays, we hang out around the house with each other. One day she picks what we watch, the other day I pick. Wednesday is when she works late. I have reconnected with some friends, and we have a weekly D&D night. I had never played before, but I've gotten really into it. They are all seasoned players, but I am coming along. Typically, I am also out later than she is, which I prefer. Thursday and every other Saturday are date nights. We usually just go to a movie or dinner on Thursday. Saturday, we do something fun, like hit a museum or go hiking. On the other Saturday is for us to do our own thing on our own. I sometimes go out on these days, but usually this is where I do my gaming. I barely play through the week now and have gotten into pretty good shape by replacing it with working out. She could be doing any number of things on these days. Sometimes she is with Asher. I get annoyed sometimes because she lies to me about where she is going. I just smile and nod, but I know what she is actually doing. She also uses these days to visit family or just have some alone time. I know what everyone is going to say. How can you be okay with her cheating? I don't have a good answer. Just doesn't bother me. I had some person reach out to me on my last post and tell me they think I might be poly. I just don't think that's the case. I have no interest in pursuing anyone else. For whatever reason, I am just indifferent to the fact of her infidelity. I also really want to stress the indifferent part. I've had so many in the comments imply that I get off on this. I don't. I feel no excitement, no pleasure, no jealousy, no embarrassment. This might be different if it were public knowledge, but it's not. I still hope that the affair just ends. If it does, I'll never say anything, and we can just go about the rest of our marriage. I know at some point I'm going to have to force it to stop. We will want kids eventually, and I am only doing that if we can be 100%. In the meantime, I'm just gonna keep enjoying my life.
When I, 28F, say her dad, Dan 58, killed her fiancé's parents, I don't mean literally. There is a lot of history here. I'm gonna go over it as much as possible, without making this too long. Kristen, 27F, and Chris, 28M, met 5 years ago. They dated for 2 years when he proposed and they moved in together. At their engagement party was the first time the families met. Everything seemed fine and all parties appeared to get along. Well, apparently some of them got along too well. This all came out a year later. Dan and Chris's mom, Kate 55F, were having an affair. Not excusing either party, I know it takes two to tango, but all the evidence shows Dan started it. He initiated contact, he was the first to send an inappropriate message, he booked the first hotel room, and so on. Kristen's mom straight up divorced her dad and moved. Kristen has always been a daddy's girl, and in some weird ways took his side in the divorce, which created a rift between her and her mom. Mom has been completely hands-off during this whole 2 years and is only coming to the wedding as a regular guest. A few days after the news came out, Chris's dad, Ernie, died from a massive heart attack. From what I've heard, he was Chris's hero. His dad was always there for his family. Chris was spending time with his dad in those days, and him just being absolutely distraught with grief. Chris immediately blamed Dan and Kate for his dad's death. He went full no contact with his mom. Kate kept trying to get in touch with him and pushed to work this out. Chris's younger sister, Leslie, kept telling her to give him time. She wouldn't listen. From what I understand, Kate had her own mental breakdown after Ernie's death. She was apparently self-medicating and drinking quite a bit. 2 months after Ernie's death, Kate, in desperate attempt to talk to Chris, ambushed him at work. It got really ugly with Chris telling her she was dead to him. She would never see a grandchild from him, never be in his life again, along with some choice names. Kate went home and called Leslie to vent, only to get chewed out again for not listening and showing up at his job. Then Leslie said she was done trying and didn't want to see her either. That night, Kate went on an especially heavy bender and died from an accidental overdose. Chris had permanently lost both parents in 2 months because of Dan. This obviously almost ended Kristen and Chris's relationship. They decided to give counseling a try and, in the 10 months following, got back on track and began the wedding planning. Chris's one caveat through all of this is that Dan is gone from their lives forever. Kristen agreed to this in counseling. This last year, as her best friend and maid of honor, has been really trying. Unfortunately, Kristen is a bit of a bridezilla. Not quite totally awful, but annoying and unempathetic enough to have me questioning our friendship. I have been doing my best to help with the preparations. However, I have my own problems. About 5 months from wedding day, my husband decided he was divorcing me after 2.5 years. I'm not going to get into that now. I just want you to know what kind of mental state I'm in when this all turns crazy. Now to the bridezilla parts. First off, she is one of these brides that has had an image of her wedding since she was like 13 and is determined to make that happen no matter what. So this is a small destination wedding in Jamaica. It was supposed to only be bride, groom, 4 bridesmaids, 4 groomsmen, originally 4 parents, but we're down to 1 now, and about 12 other assorted guests, like spouses and a few choice friends. I tried to tell her it would be best to just have the wedding here in the States, especially given everything that has happened, but she didn't listen. I've been tied up trying to help organize makeup, hair, dresses, tuxes for Jamaica, while at the same time getting fucking divorced. I have gotten very little sympathy from Kristen during this. She is always like, I know, I'm so sorry for you, I will absolutely be there for you every day, it's just this wedding, I just need to get through it, yada yada yada. Anyway, I'm pushing through. Well, here's where the biggest problem comes in. About 1 month prior to the wedding day, Kristen decides she needs her dad walking her down the aisle. I know she was planning that the whole time, even if she didn't say it. She decided to bring this up to Chris, saying in her dream wedding she has always pictured him giving her away. Then we can go no contact. It's just this one day. Chris freaks out understandably. He says, absolutely no way. They fight for an hour about this, until finally Chris just says, Fine, you can have him walk you, but it will be at your next wedding because this one is off. Chris leaves and doesn't come back. Kristen has a meltdown and starts calling me. She had decided that the day of my divorce finalizing was the day to do this, so I was not exactly available. After about 6 hours, she shows up at my new one-bedroom apartment. Yay me, a total mess. I tell her she needs to start trying to call him. He ignores her for 2 days before we track down where he's at. They talk. She swears he is cut off and that this was just her being crazy before the wedding. He gives her another chance and the wedding plans continue. I'm not going to lie, I was kind of hoping the wedding was going to be off. But a few weeks later, we all boarded a plane for Jamaica, and quite possibly the greatest shit show in the history of weddings. We arrived. It was a tight schedule at the front end. Luckily, we had an early morning arrival. We had all day on day 2 for prep, wedding day 3. The bride and groom were leaving on a 4-day cruise on day 4, then returning to the resort for a week after. All the rest of the guests were there at the resort for days 4 to 7. We were supposed to greet them up on their return from the cruise, before catching our own flights out later that day. It was really too much, but I was looking forward to basically 3.5 days of vacation. I really felt like I deserved it, dealing with the drama of this wedding for however long and going through my own divorce during. The first red flag that it was going to get ugly came when the tuxedos got delivered. There were 6. I knew the groom and 4 groomsmen equaled 5, so why the hell were there 6? Kristen said it must have just been a mistake on their end. Who cares? At least it wasn't 4, with a laugh. I had my suspicions, and I'm sure you all are thinking the same thing. Day 2 and the morning of was a blur. Getting ready for the event, decorating, hair, makeup, dresses. Despite all this, I noticed Kristen texting of her phone a little more than usual, especially considering everyone was here with her. When we got to the actual ceremony and nothing crazy had happened, I was very relieved. Everyone walks out, all very nice. Chris is standing there at the altar, wedding party on each side, it's all good. Music starts and Kristen steps out with Dan on her arm. All of the air left the space, and this was an outdoor wedding. I looked at Chris. Tears were forming in his eyes and a rage was brewing on his brow. A couple of the groomsmen were visibly pissed off. I was beside myself. I have known Kristen for 9 years and never thought she would be this dense and selfish. I'm sure she thought that Chris, being the good guy that he is, would never make a scene and would just play the part, and that she would get the chance to smooth it over later. She was wrong. All the guests stared in pure bewilderment, shocked Pikachu face across every one of them. When they reached the altar, Dan, in a move of pure stupidity, extended his hand towards Chris. Yeah, I get this is a custom, but goddamn man, read the room. As he stood there, with hand extended, Chris came with an overhand right that landed square on the nose. The blood spatter laid a red mist of droplets all over Kristen's white dress. Dan hit the ground, but he was a tough old bastard, and popped up ready to fight Chris. As he charged, Chris's best man, Bill, came out of nowhere and kicked Dan square in the chest, sending flying to ground again. He wallowed around on the floor with the wind knocked out of him. One of the other bridesmaids' husbands jumped in to break things up. Meanwhile, Kristen was in Chris's face just screaming. I got in between them and called the other bridesmaids to help get her out of here. They got in between us, and I turned to start pushing Chris out of the area. Dan was still flopping on the ground when his ex-wife got up, walked over, stomped on his balls, and then exited the area. As I was pushing Chris one way, Kristen slipped past the others and started screaming at me, "You cunt, don't think taking and fucking my husband is gonna make up for not fucking your own." That was a low blow. This bitch has officially lost her mind. I turned to her and said, "What did you say?" She doubled down. "You heard me. You ruined your marriage by being a boring fuck. Don't think you can make up for that by taking mine now." I snapped. It was on. It was a mess of slapping and hair pulling and dress ripping. The other ladies jumped in and broke things up, both of us screaming at each other. Once everyone was separated, it calmed down. Different groups were pushed back in their rooms. I was reeling. Kristen had really cut deep. The idea I was after her husband was ridiculous. I had never so much as had a private conversation with Chris. That was just her being crazy. But to use my own divorce against me, to cut me the way my ex-husband had, that moment was too low. We were done. Friendship dead. Kristen, much to everyone's delight, made a flight change and left that very night back home, and took Dan with her. We all assumed we were getting kicked out of the resort for the fight, but the hotel manager said drunk Americans fighting at a wedding, pretty normal. He warned us if it happens again, though, they'd call the authorities. The one bridesmaid and her husband managed to get Kristen and Chris's cruise trip switched to them for a low fee. Everyone slept off the rest of wedding day. Kristen's mom and a couple other older guests left on day 4. Chris stayed at the resort the rest of that week, as did the rest of the wedding party and a few other friends. We decided to live it up for 3 days. We started that night on day 4. I, for one, was cutting loose. I had the year from hell, divorce, and bridezilla, all culminating in the most disastrous wedding ever. Well, it got weird on night 1. After some heavy drinking, I found myself waking up naked in bed with Chris. We both looked at each other in the morning like, what the hell did we do? And what do we do now? May not have been the best decision, but decided that going for round 2 right then was the thing to do. It was the first of many more rounds over the next few days. I had not been this uninhibited in so long. I made the most of every time. When the time for me to fly out hit, Chris still had another week at the resort for his honeymoon. We didn't do any romantic movies-esque goodbye or anything. I left on the same flight with a few other guests. Others had left at various times that day and the days prior. On my ride home, I was feeling very guilty. It was guilt for what happened with Chris, not for Kristen. Fuck her. But for my ex-husband, I came to realize on that flight I had this idea of what I wanted married life to be. Or maybe just what it was supposed to be. I knew we both made mistakes, but for once I was starting to realize that mine were the ones that really led to our divorce. I had a fling with Chris, but what I really wanted was my ex-husband back. I was going to try when I returned. Unfortunately, I would find out some mistakes have a way of catching up with you, while others somehow come full circle. I waited a full week before calling my ex-husband. I wanted to have all my thoughts in order. I ran through things he might say. I ran through things I wanted to say. I had fake conversations with myself. When I finally sent him a text asking to talk, I was so nervous I hoped he wouldn't respond. Just like that, though, he texted back, "Why?" All the scenarios I ran through, and this wasn't one of them. He texted back and said, I missed him, and wondered if we could just talk. No pressure, just talk. He texted back, I don't know, I'm not sure I want that. I know it probably took a lot to reach out, so I will say this. I'm not sure if I'm ready to talk. I would prefer if you gave me some time to think about that. Please don't message again. I will reach out once I have an answer, and promise not to keep you waiting longer than a week. This was the longest week of my life. When I got a message from him exactly 1 week later, I got literally nauseous with nerves. He wanted to know why I missed him and why I wanted to talk. I told him I had revelation about our problems, that I didn't treat him fairly, that I was finally starting to see how I made him feel. I wanted to try again, that no matter what, I did choose him. I did want to be with him for life, have kids, grow old, all the things. He responded, I'm not sure I want to try again, but I'm willing to continue to talk. We can see what happens from there. I'm gonna go now. Feel free to call me tomorrow after work. For the next 3 days, we talked after work. The first couple days, we just caught each other up on our lives. It was awkward, like when you run into an old high school friend at the mall, but it was start. It was on the 3rd day that things got real. We began to talk about our marriage problems. I know he was hurt and that I minimized his feelings. And when he asked for divorce, I got defensive and aggressive instead of listening. I was trying to just listen now when I had an intrusive thought. This thought made me ask, have you started dating or seeing anyone, anything? It's okay if you have. We said we would just talk, so I don't expect anything. I'm just wondering. He told me he had not. He did say he had created a dating profile, but that he hadn't put much effort into it and had not had a match. I felt relieved by this, but I should have realized what he was about to ask. He said, Well, how about you? I wanted so bad to lie, to not tell him about Chris. But I knew I couldn't hide it, so I told him all about the wedding, which I had said I wasn't ready to talk about up to this point, and what happened after. He asked a few more probing questions, and I knew I set us back. He got off the call pretty quickly after. I wondered if he would call me back. I tried calling and texting the next couple days but got no response. That's when I came to the realization. It had been at least 40 days since my last period. Panic set in immediately. I rushed out to the pharmacy and grabbed a 3-pack off the shelf. When the first one came back positive, I took the second, then the third, all positive. That same day, my ex-husband called me for the last time. I didn't waste time, I told him right away. We essentially said our goodbyes. He was certain that there was no future for us now. I cried for a week straight. At that point, I contacted Chris and told him. Over the next month, we talked it out, came up with a plan for our future as parents. We had no plans of starting a relationship, just promised to be the best co-parents we could be. He was really supportive through the whole pregnancy and was in the delivery room when our daughter was born. 4 months after her birth, Chris stopped by to check on us. This was very common, and I felt good each time he did. He looked at me with this warm smile and said, "You want to go out with me on a real date?" I was shocked at the time. He just continued. I think we had so much trauma from our last relationships that neither of us was ready for another. But maybe it's time, and maybe we should give each other a chance. That was 5 years ago. We have been married for 3 now. I can't believe where we are. Our relationship dynamic has evolved. We are closer and happier than ever. Kristen came back with some ugly social media posts and passive-aggressive stuff the first 6 months post-wedding. I learned this from friends as I had blocked her up on my return. We didn't do any large pregnancy announcements, obviously, as the circumstances were a little embarrassing. We sent out exactly one, a picture of Chris standing behind me with his hands on my belly. The card just said, "Kristen, we're all doing so much better without you." We never heard from her again. After that last phone call, I never heard from my ex-husband again. I love Chris, but every once in a while, my ex will creep into my head, and I'll have a moment of where I wish we at least had gotten closure. I heard he had met someone. That was all I knew. That is until this past Saturday night. Chris and I left our girl with my parents and took ourselves on a little vacation. We got dressed up on Saturday night and went out to a club. First time. We weren't there 15 minutes when we ran into my ex and his new wife. I didn't know what to say. He was so different, but in a good way. We took a moment to talk, and by the end of the night, I felt like we both finally had closure. I would give you all more details, but honestly, I feel like that's his story to tell.
I need to know if I am overreacting. This situation was already crazy. I'll give a quick TLDR, but it's an unbelievable story. I, Emily 35F, have been married to my husband Walt for 6 years. We have 2 kids, Paul 10M and Brian 5M. 11 years ago, when Walt and I were engaged, he went missing during a vacation trip to Thailand. He was missing for nearly 5 years, and told us all he had been in a Cambodian prison that whole time. I found out right after he left for the trip I was pregnant with Paul. I became extremely close with his family during this time. I also met and fell in love with a man named Kevin, who I was engaged to. When Walt returned, I found myself torn between picking up where we left off and continuing with Kevin. I chose to give Walt and I a chance. We got married a week later, and I was pregnant with Brian in less than a year. I thought things had been fine in our relationship. We loved each other, and despite him being a workaholic, we were mostly happy. I have never been one to indulge myself with a professional massage. I like having my shoulders or feet rubbed by Walt. It's just, to me, a luxury expense, and I haven't ever been willing to go. Walt's been a little bit more distant lately, and I have been feeling a little stressed with work. I have this coworker who has been pushing me, saying the place she goes is amazing. It doesn't matter who you get, they're all good. And to just go. I did just that. I walked in and asked if they had any availability. The guy at the desk said they did and took down some information. He said it would just be like 5 to 10 minutes. That's when I noticed the small bulletin behind the desk had 3 pictures from the security camera and a note above that said permanent ban. I did a double take and swore that the one guy looks just like Walt. I'm staring at this picture when the front desk attendant asks if something's wrong. I tell him, I think I know that guy in the picture. How do you get on a banned list? He says, oh, it's our owner's policy if anyone asks for a happy ending. I was aghast at that moment. People do that? He replied, yeah, not very often. It's rare, but it does happen, and sadly it seems to always happen to the same person. He then apologized for oversharing, and I told him not to worry about it. He said Lisa was ready for me. She was standing at the entrance of the hall. She was a maybe 5'1" and 110 pounds Asian American woman. I just had a feeling this was the massage therapist that always got these creeps. We went back, and I enjoyed the massage with some light small talk. Her accent was totally Midwestern. This was a woman who grew up here and probably several generations before had as well. I found out she had worked at this particular place for 3 years. As we finished, I couldn't help myself, and I had to know, so I just came with the truth. This is very hard to say, but I noticed the list of banned guys. One of them is my husband. Were you by chance his massage therapist? She looked at me with genuine concerns as my eyes filled and said, I had to be, because all 3 guys were my clients. Which one was he? I said, the one in the orange shirt. She said, oh yes, I'm very sorry. I began to cry and said, no, I'm sorry, I'm so embarrassed and so sorry, I can't believe he did that to you. Did he just outright ask? She said, this is going to be hard to hear, but you need to know the truth, if that's your husband. I brought him into the room same as you, and left while he got ready. When I knocked, he said he was ready. But when I walked in, he was laying face up, fully erect and holding some amount of cash. I immediately left the room and called for Jake, our front desk guy. He escorted the man out. I wanted to throw up. I composed myself and apologized again. I ended giving her like $100 tip. I went straight home and began prepping to leave. Then this sudden wave of calm hit me, and I realized I needed to know how far this went. I did my best to play normal. When he finally got home from work, I just treated it like a normal night. When he went to bed, I used the opportunity to go through his phone. Texts were clean, no Snapchat, WhatsApp, etc. I clicked on his Reddit. There were his 4 posts from when he came back home from his imprisonment. I had seen these before. I was about to give up when I noticed I could switch between accounts. I was disgusted by what I found. He was joined to all Asian women fetish subs and massage subs. The chats were worse. As I read through them, most were just faceless women, probably men pretending actually, that he was sexting with. But there was one that he was definitely seeing. There were details of meetups and how much he would pay, what he wanted her to wear or do. He was paying a sex worker for happy ending massages. He kept referring to her as Sok. Quick Google search told me this was a common Cambodian name. Probably wasn't really her name, but he was paying for the fantasy. There was another conversation on there, which, as I read, seemed very familiar. That's when I realized it was Jorge on the other end. They were both covering for each other for years through various affairs. As I scrolled through their long conversation history, I came across the most knife-twisting part. I headed home. I knew Jorge would inform Walt. I went ahead and sent Jorge's whole family the evidence of his infidelity. I then sent Walt's out to everyone I knew as well. By time Walt came home, which was way earlier than he ever had, he was fuming and getting bombarded with messages. I already had my car loaded with mine and kids' things. My best friend had taken the kids earlier. Walt came at me with attitude, and I was ready to fight. He switched approaches, and I tried to gaslight me and explain. I wasn't having it. I told him I knew about everything. Cambodia, Born, the sex worker. He told me she's not a sex worker, just a college student in need of extra money. I screamed back at him, that's fucking worse. Now you're just taking advantage of a young girl in need. He suddenly shut up after that, and I told him he could expect divorce papers and nothing else. Then I left. It's been a few weeks. Feel like an idiot for not figuring this out. I'm starting to notice the signs I overlooked, and that I was keeping myself blind to them. The long hours at work, even though we don't need it, starting of his own bank account from our joint account. fact he signs up or agrees to every business trip or conference. It was just his way of feeding his depravity. The worst part is he came back for me. He could have came back and left me alone. I could have married Kevin. And now knowing what I gave him up for, I hate myself even more. Now where I am getting some push that I'm overreacting. I am pushing for 100% custody and no visitation for him in the interim. I have evidence of porn addiction, work addiction, and visiting sex workers. I am also going 100% no contact with his parents. Few people, not many, are saying I should not try to cut the father and grandparents out of my kids' lives. I, however, disagree and feel Walt is a danger to them given his self-destructive and manipulative behavior. His parents will only get the time he gets, and at this point, I'm at best offering weekly supervised visits. Otherwise, they are not to be in my life to any degree. What do you all think? Is this too much? Should I let them be in my kids' lives? He is a good father when he's there, and they are great grandparents. But I can't get over the fact it's all built on lies and manipulation. So last year, something unexpected happened. I was in a bitter custody dispute with my lying, cheating ex-husband. Ever since I found out about his cheating 3 years earlier, he had been making my life hell. The divorce took forever. He snowballed the price of our house, and then he fought every custody decision along the way. The unexpected thing was my ex-fiancé, Kevin, figured out that my ex-husband was bragging about this on Reddit. Out of nowhere, he emailed me the evidence, and it helped tremendously in court. I was really excited when I first heard from Kevin and tried to engage with him on a personal level. He didn't want that, and I understood. I hurt him more than he ever deserved. I wish I could go back and do it all over again. 'Cause believe me, hindsight is 20/20, and this was probably the biggest mistake of my life. Although I attempted to reach him, he blocked me. When he did that, I took the hint and let it go. However, I can't stop thinking about him. I just feel like he wouldn't have helped me like that if he didn't still have some sort of feelings for me. He very well could have just turned the other cheek. I'm really thinking about reaching out to him. I don't know what his relationship status is, but I think it's worth a shot. I honestly never thought I would hear from him again. So it almost feels like fate. He was the one to save me. I've been checking around the different platforms, and it seems he still doesn't do social media. I know his email, so I'm thinking about creating a new one so I can message him. If he tells me he's married or seeing someone, I'll let this go. But at this point, I feel like I need to try. I'm still kicking myself for letting him go all those years ago. He was really the most wonderful man and a great dad to my son. This has to be my chance. It'd make things right. Don't you think? Would you go for it? I think I'm gonna go for it.